Patrick Mahomes is not going to play Week 17. Then he's going to have a bye. His last game against Atlanta, he was off. Eric, I don't love that. I did 20 days off for even Mahomes. Yeah. Doesn't that seem extreme?
Yeah, I don't love it either. But we have this debate every year. When we used to have a preseason, it was always, do you play guys in the fourth preseason game? And then you get to the end of the year, and it's, do you play guys in these this last game if it's meaningless? And everybody has different opinions on the rust versus rest. But you look at quarterbacks who have been out that last game and then had the bye, and they haven't been very successful. I remember when the Colts went 14-2, they tried to do a hybrid thing and played Peyton Manning like 3 snaps. That didn't work out really well for him. And Mahomes now is coming off a stretch where his quarterback numbers are good, but they're low, and it's the lowest he's been. Well, he's been under 100, I think the last 4 games.
Yeah.
Didn't play great against Miami, didn't play great against Atlanta. And it's hard. You amp it up preseason to regular season, and then you amp it up again regular season to the playoffs, and you've got 3 weeks off, and suddenly you're in that that higher intensity. It's hard. It's hard to do.
It's interesting. Let's say Dallas wins, gets to the playoffs. I've said this before. Dak's better than Andy Dalton, but the numbers don't lie currently, and they don't lie their first 4 years in the league when they both had support. I don't think the gap's massive. If Dallas snuck into the playoffs, could they be trouble? I mean, the weapons they have offensive personnel, Eric.
Yeah, with Andy Dalton, I'm with you. Is Dak Prescott $28 million better than Andy Dalton? It doesn't look like it. Andy had a really successful early part of his career. And what would Andy Dalton have been with those Dallas teams that Dak's played with? And you watch him play now, and you see the comfort level in the system. They've hung 30-plus on the last 3 opponents. I could see him doing it against the Giants. Now they're riding a 4-game win streak with an offense that's dangerous and gelling. They could easily make some noise in the playoffs. And you want to be hot as you go into it. And they're going to be hot going into the playoffs if they somehow find a way to get in.
Yeah, I feel the same way. It's like Andy Dalton. There's not a lot of sex appeal to it. He doesn't have the big arm. He doesn't run around a lot. He's not American hero. But, there is something to be said. He's the point guard who he's a pass first instead of a shoot first point guard. And we all love the Westbrooks and the Kyrie Irvings, but there is something to be said when you have a great receiving core. He's a good passer of the football. He's a nice distributor. He gets it out early. That's what I see.
Yeah, he's a smart, experienced guy. And he's not sexy in terms of the way that he plays, but to some degree, Dak isn't either. It's not like he's making a lot of wow plays when he plays. And Dallas is going to have a pretty interesting decision in the offseason. If they do make the playoffs and Dalton continues to play well, it's a pretty significant difference in salary. It's actually a massive difference in salary. Well, we'd have to pay these 2 guys.
Yeah. So Tom Brady well. I don't see them as a team that's going to go on a playoff roll. They have beaten bad teams all year. They have struggled against good teams. But it's funny. I said the other day when Peyton Manning went to Denver at 36 years old and with a less dysfunctional organization, Denver just made the playoffs. He lost in the playoffs, but I think we kind of all looked at it and thought, what a move by Peyton, what a move by Denver. This was a successful year. Brady's 43 to a completely dysfunctional organization with no preseason due to a pandemic. And I look at it and I think, if he lost in the playoffs, it worked. It was successful. Your thoughts on Brady and the Bucs in the playoffs, and what if he does lose? How will you view it?
Yeah, I've struggled with the way this has been handled from the beginning. I feel like if you're going to bring a 43-year-old guy in who's not mobile, whose greatest strength is his mind, you do what he's most comfortable with from the beginning. You don't have, it's not that he can't learn, but you don't have him thinking if his greatest asset is his understanding of what's happening. And you hear them talk about getting Mike Evans 1,000 yards and how that's an important milestone going into the last game of the season. It doesn't make sense to me. Why is that important? It's a nice to have, but you said it. There's an element of disconnect that's going on, and I know they're talking about Super Bowl or bust, but making the playoffs and if they can get a win in the playoffs, I think that's success for the way this is all gone down.
So I know yesterday Greg Cosell was on and he talked about Lamar Jackson and he said, listen, he's got 44 touchdowns, no interceptions in the red zone. They're great on third down. He's a headache situationally. And, it's funny. I look at them in the playoffs last year and Lamar's an MVP and it felt like, Baltimore's got a roll. And now I look at them and I think, I wouldn't want to play Baltimore. I'm not sure what the expectations are. Your thoughts about them as a playoff team?
You don't want to play Baltimore. It's like playing those teams that run the wing tee in college football, or they've got a scheme that nobody else is running. What Baltimore does is so unique, and it's so difficult to deal with. And the fact that they're going into the playoffs and they'll be on a roll. I think they'll be 4 straight or 5 straight wins if they go in. So they'll be red hot. Lamar doesn't have all the pressure that he had last year.
He doesn't.
The MVP, they had the number 1 seed. They're playing with house money. They do something that nobody else does, and they can eat up huge chunks of the clock, which means all those high-powered offenses and all those great quarterbacks, they're sitting watching as Baltimore just slowly grinds away at you. And it's a rough package to have to deal with if you're getting ready for them.
Yeah, and I love what you said. It's not the same. There is no pressure on Lamar this year. Last year it was the MVP. You got to win. And listen, we all react differently to pressure. This year he's better. He's played against more defenses. He's clearly improving, and there's no pressure. So the Packers lose David Bakhtiari, left tackle. He's a great pass-blocking left tackle. I think he grades number 1, has been for the last several years. Listen, the Ravens offense has been better without Ronnie Stanley, and we all know Ronnie Stanley's unbelievable, maybe the best left tackle in the AFC. David Bakhtiari, what would you do as a coach? Khalil Mack into town. Here we are, no left tackle. Like, Green Bay does develop offensive linemen pretty good. What's the gap, Bakhtiari to a left tackle? What do you do if you're Green Bay for the next month without a Hall of Fame first ballot left tackle?
Yeah, well, look, it's terrible to have an injury at this point in the season, especially at left tackle, and especially with a quarterback that's more of a pocket passer than not. But the nice thing about Aaron Rodgers is he can get out, and they can move the pocket if they want to. And what this game does allow them to do is to continue to try different types of protection packages. You bring the tight end over there, he can help the left tackle. You bring the back over there, he can chip on the pass rusher with the left tackle. You can slide the line over in that direction. There's a lot of things that you can do to help one guy. Now, it takes away some resources from other spots, but Aaron Rodgers is going to be conscious of it. Aaron Rodgers is experienced enough to know when he's going to be weak due to protection and the vulnerabilities. So I think if it had to happen to someone, it happened to him is probably the least impactful.
Finally, you're in Ohio and Cleveland. Big game for Baker this weekend. I do think they'll probably win. Overall, look at his season. What do you expect to the next couple of weeks going forward for Baker Mayfield?
Here's my frustration with the Browns, and I love Kevin Stefanski, but I don't know how you throw the ball 53 times when you've got no receivers and you've got 2 running backs that are arguably the best tandem in the league. That doesn't make any sense. And I think the Browns' best chance to win, not just this week, but also win the playoffs, is if it's the Cleveland Browns featuring Baker Mayfield, not starring Baker Mayfield. Rely on the offensive line, rely on the running backs, and then Baker plays that much better. Take the pressure off of him. Do not make him the focal point of this offense. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it doesn't work. If you look at the numbers, it just simply doesn't work. All right, Eric, you have yourself a great holiday. Happy New Year to you and your family. And it's great seeing you again.
Good to see you too, Colin. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, the Lamar Jackson thing is really interesting. He's a situational quarterback nightmare. Greg Cosell was on yesterday talking about, and I just asked him straight out, like, you look at film. I don't look at film like you do. You look at film. When you look at film of Lamar Jackson, especially late in the year this year, what Greg Cosell does the film say?
One area in which they're so good, Colin, is the red zone. And when you score touchdowns in the red zone, I was researching for a piece I did for my matchup show this week on Lamar in the red zone. The last 2 seasons, he has 44 touchdown passes and no interceptions in the red zone. And they are really, really good with pass game concepts in the red